Hello, everyone. My name is Jamie Beck, and I'm the President and CEO of Filo Mining. Thank you for taking the time to get an update on our Filo del Sol project. I'm excited to share our progress and give an update on our plans for the company. I encourage everyone to take a look at our cautionary statement. I will be making forward-looking statements during this presentation. A copy of this will be posted on our website, and I encourage you to read through at your leisure. Filo Mining is a South American advanced exploration company. We are advancing our 100% owned Filo del Sol project. This is a project that has a current indicated resource of 4.4 million ounces of gold, 147 million ounces of silver, and over 3 billion pounds of copper. Almost entirely all of that resource sits within the uppermost oxidized portion of the project, our oxide cap. This is a project that's part of the Lundin Group of Companies, which broadly means we are backed by the Lundin family. They are 36% shareholders. Filo Mining trades in Toronto, in Sweden, and in the US, and there's 110 million shares outstanding. We currently have a market cap of about 370 million Canadian. Filo del Sol is a copper, gold, silver project that sits on the border between Chile and Argentina. The bulk of the project is in San Juan Province, Argentina, just north of the Veladero project. And Argentina, and in particular San Juan, are home to a number of large-scale mining operations. This is a project that is 12 kilometers away from one of the Lundin Group sister companies, Jose Maria Resources. And I mention that because Jose Maria is a little bit more advanced. They have submitted their environmental permits and are waiting on approval from the San Juan authorities and moving towards construction. So as Jose Maria advances, things like power, water, roads, and other infrastructure will be brought to the region, having positive knock-on benefits to Filo. At a very high level, there are a dearth of quality copper investment opportunities out there. Filo del Sol happens to be one of them. This is a project that is backstopped by a robust oxide pre-feasibility study that was completed in 2019. If you run that at spot metals prices, that project is worth well over $2 billion and a 30% IRR, a very special numbers in the base metal space. In addition to that oxide cap, the past few years, we have been exploring at depth to try and understand the size and scale of the potential porphyry mineralization underlying that oxide resource. We now have multiple drill intercepts over 1 kilometer from surface, spanning a strike length north to south of about 4 kilometers and east-west somewhere between 500 and 800 meters. So it's really starting to prove up multi-billion ton potential at depth. Last year, we intersected hole 32, which was our highlight, 1,009 meters of almost 1% copper equivalent. And this led to the development of an initial exploration target, which was published in June. I've currently got 5 drill rigs on site. Our drill program runs until the end of May 2021, and we will be releasing assay results as they come throughout the remainder of the year. Everybody's probably seen this chart in some form of another. Our view here is copper has been pressing towards $4.50 and take a view on demand, whether that's electric vehicles, decarbonization, infrastructure spending on the back of stimulus. One way or another, though, our view is that there has been a lack of investment in the space. And what we're seeing are that there really are not enough projects prepped and ready to go to meet what everybody is projecting to be a gap between supply and demand. I think Filo sets itself apart from other projects because we've been able to advance it, engineering studies, environmental baseline work, all of our community and social engagement work, all of the things that it takes in terms of coming along with that resource development, which means this is a project that's decades ahead of a brand new discovery, for example. So Filo is really prepped and ready to go and has the ability to meet this upcoming gap within the next 5 years. Taking a look at our pre-feasibility study, this is a low-cost heap leach operation that was planned. The material is crushed from the open pit mine, conveyed to an on-off leach pad where it is leached with water to then get sent to SXEW to produce copper cathode. The spent material is then washed, rinsed, agglomerated, and moved to a precious metals pad where we leach for the gold and silver to produce gold, silver, doré. High-level economics were a 1.3 billion NPV after tax and a 23% IRR. Initial capital for this project is 1.3 billion as well. This was run at $3 copper and 1,300 gold. And in the grand scheme of big Andean projects, despite the CapEx seeming relatively high, this is actually a very moderate project. Many of these big copper gold porphyries often run 3 or 4 billion initial capital to get up and going. And so Filo offers that opportunity to get up with a slightly more moderate CapEx. The mine plan here is 13 years. Copper production makes up about 55% of the revenue, and the precious metals makes up about 45% of the revenue. Importantly, silver, 15% of the revenue. This is a mine plan that produced 120 million ounces of silver. That is a significant contributor and has a great potential when we think about flexibility in terms of financing that initial capital. All to say, though, what really sets Filo apart is that this is really the tip of the iceberg. As we look at ratcheting up metals prices closer to where they are today, you can easily see Filo starting to creep into the north of $2 billion NPV and greater than 30% IRR range. In comparison to many of our peers and other copper development stories, this is a chart that shows CapEx versus IRR and NPV. The bubble size represents the initial capital cost, and in this case, Filo's is one of the smallest. As well, it's ranks really well in terms of IRR. As we develop the more mineralization at depth and this grows into a much larger project, I think what we'll start to see is Filo moving to the right-hand side of this chart. Our exploration over the past few years has been extremely successful. I mentioned earlier on, hole 32, last year drilled 1,009 meters of 0.95% copper equivalent. This was about in the middle of the deposit, sitting underneath our oxide cap. As we completed a 3D IP survey, there were a number of different geophysical anomalies identified. And in fact, 32 and 34 came very close to drilling into one of these. We had a hole last year, 38, which was going right down the middle and into 2% copper equivalent prior to having to demobilize from site as a result of the COVID pandemic. So clearly an area we're excited to get back and continue to drill. Hole 32 ranks amongst one of the best copper intercepts drilled globally over the past 2 years. This was really quite an exciting hole. Some of the focus of our exploration this year is going to be some infill drilling in and around hole 32 to see whether or not we can tighten up the drill spacing and potentially release an initial resource around that deeper sulphide. Here it is in 3 dimensions. And you can take a look at these deep intercepts as they extend out past the oxide resource pit shell. Interestingly, as we move to the north, we're starting to see grades increase and leads us into hopefully trying to find a bit of the feeder zone and potentially where some of these higher grades are coming up and generating this deposit. I mentioned the exploration target earlier on in the presentation. Essentially, it's shown graphically by this polygon that we've drawn around the deep drilling. This was taking predicted volumes and average grades through that deep drilling. And we've come up with a target between 1.2 and 1.6 billion tons of somewhere between 0.7 and 0.9% copper equivalent, almost 1% copper equivalent. The development of this exploration target, we think, is just the first step. Things are open to the north as well as at depth, and we believe we've got a good opportunity this season to expand and grow that exploration target with our exploration drilling. In terms of the field program this year, we've released 2 results so far. The first one was at the end of March. This was highlighted by hole 43 to the north. This was a full kilometer step out from our previous drilling and intersected 768 meters of 0.39% copper equivalent. Interestingly, as we got towards depth at that hole, the grades increased dramatically and we were into almost 0.8% copper equivalent over the bottom 80 meters of that hole. Hole 44 was another very important hole for us. This pulled the whole deposit about 200 meters to the east, and that intersected 940 meters of 0.67% copper equivalent. So we're starting to grow to the north and to the east. On long section, you can see hole 43 now sticking out. That's a full kilometer to the north, and the grades improved right at depth. And here are some of the drill traces that we have planned for the remainder of the year. As you can see, we're building our information in and around the hole 34 and 32 area with a goal towards an initial inferred resource there. In section east-west, hole 44 really stands out because you can see simply how much of this hole intersected mineralization completely outside of our existing resource pit shell shown in red. So we believe that a lot of the drilling that has happened this season, last season, and these big, long, deep intercepts are going to add substantial tonnage to the overall resource in due time. The second release from the year highlighted the precious metals nature of the deposit. Two key results. First off, 42 was a brand new gold discovery of oxide, 48 meters of over a gram gold. And this was about 1.5 kilometers north of the existing resource pit shell. So lots of work still to do there, and a very exciting new discovery. Holes 37 and 41 were partial assays. We wanted to get the news out on this on the silver zone. We actually have a very high grade silver zone within the oxide pit shell, and we've been able to extend that zone about 600 meters to the north. This was the zone that contains about 120 million ounces of silver within our pit shell, and extending to the north has grown that zone by about 1/3 of its size. We hit 100 meters of almost 120 grams in hole 37. So really exciting to see the precious metals nature of the deposit growing alongside the copper story. One of the key advantages for a small company like Filo is that we've got a much broader network of worldwide experts within the Lundin Group that we can rely on, and ESG is an area where that comes to the forefront. Fortunate to have the guidance of the Lundin Foundation. They help develop our mineral development policy. They help alignment with international best practices and standards. They help us get off on the right foot with strong community relations. So really a differentiator for us in terms of having the Lundin Foundation, having that level of expertise to rely on. For those familiar with the Lundin Gold story, the foundation helped guide their ESG programs and have been getting international recognition for responsible mineral development in Ecuador. So again, I think a huge differentiator for us as a junior company moving forward. The company is backed by a strong board, obviously led by the Lundins, but input from the Lundin Foundation, Wojtek, who's our main technical advisor and largely responsible for the discovery and early development at Filo, Alessandro, who sits on the board of Lundin Gold as their CFO, and Carmel Daniel, who runs CD Capital out of the UK, and we're big investors in the company in our last equity raise. In summary, this is an exciting time for Filo. We are in the midst of our drill program. We've had a few really interesting results to date. I think some very exciting results still to come. And we should have fairly consistent milestones in terms of drilling news over the next few months. So catalyst-rich part of our season, hopefully culminating in an initial inferred resource from the deeper drilling in and around hole 32. Look for milestone news out of Jose Maria to the north as they advance and receive their permits. As they move towards construction, that will be positive news that trickles into the Filo story. And remember, this is one that's backstopped by an existing robust oxide project that sits on top. If you take a look at sort of a price to NAV basis, Filo today is trading at about 0.1 or 0.15 times NAV on the oxide project alone. And that gets you what we believe is going to be 40 or 50 years of mining sulfides beneath for free. So a super exciting time to get involved. Thanks for your time today and listening to the story. And I look forward to sharing exploration results throughout the remainder of the year. Thank you.